All right, this last technique is a variation of the pop that we did earlier. So just like the first, we're going to hit P on our keyboard with illustration selected for position. Again, we can just toggle there in our transform commands. We are going to click the stopwatch. And then just like before, we're going to space this out a couple frames and modify where it is in the beginning. So just like design, I'm going to move it down. And I'm going to select the keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. We're going to open up the graph editor. For this, I'm going to make it a little bigger. And just like before, we want all these curves to look the same so they feel kind of the same. And if we hit preview, you can see design, animation, illustration. Okay, but again, this is popping a little fast. We want the tail to be longer. I'm going to stretch that out. Alrighty, that seems nice. We're going to extend our work area just a bit. So to add some more complexity to the pop-in effect, what we're going to do is we're going to count the number of letters in illustration. And I did choose the longest word for this, so that makes it a little annoying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're going to duplicate this layer 12 times. And again, I'm duplicating by hitting Command D on the keyboard. All right, so you can see now we've got 12 illustrations. And now what we're going to do is we are going to mask out all but one letter for each of these layers. Okay, masks are essentially shapes that you can draw on top of any layer, and that shape hides anything that's not inside of it. And you make one by selecting one of the shape tools and simply drawing a shape on a pre-existing non-shape layer. You can also make custom shapes using the pen tool. And yeah, let's start masking. So we're going to go to the first illustration. We're going to click the rectangle tool. Let's start masking out each individual layer. So we have illustration, mask 1. That eye has been masked out, so we can now just go to number 2, and we're going to grab this L. And we are going to continue this process for all these layers, so I'll just fast forward a little bit. Go to A. Okay, so A, you can see that it is off. So if I try to select some of the A, you'll see that I'm definitely going to get this T, the crossbar. So instead, I'm going to select the pen tool, because for text layers, the pen tool also creates masks. And we are just going to create a nice custom mask for A. Move on to T, do the same thing for T. And then we're back to normal letters. All right, so if we go back to full screen, you can see that we have 12 of these layers in our timeline. And if we select them all and we hit U on the keyboard, we'll see all of our keyframes on all of these illustration layers. And if we hit tilde on the keyboard, it will open any panel we have selected full screen. So if we hit tilde on our timeline, you can see, get a good picture of what we have going on. And if we hit playback, you'll see it looks just the same as it did before. The magic of this effect comes from what we're about to do, which is staggering the layers. So if we go down here to our eye layer, that's where we want our animation to start. And we're going to grab all the other layers above it by shift clicking. And we're going to scoot them back just one frame. And then we're going to command click to deselect that one. And we're going to scoot them all back, command click, scoot back, command click, scoot back. And we're going to keep doing that until we get to the top. And you can scoot these back more than one frame. You can have it be irregular. You can have it be random, so it's coming out not from the left to right. You can pull them from the middle. You can organize these however you want. But now, if we come back and we hit play, you'll see, whoa, we've got really interesting animation. Look at that. And now one last thing we're going to do before we're done with this illustration animation is something called pre-comping. And pre-comping is important if in a situation like this you have a bunch of layers for something that we no longer need to animate or worry about. So we're going to do our first pre-comp, and we do that by shift-clicking to select all of our illustration layers, right-clicking, and selecting pre-compose. Here we can name everything illustration and make sure move all attributes and adjust composition duration is selected, and we hit OK. And what that did is essentially group all 12 of those layers and move them to a new composition, just like this one. You can see it nested right here. If we click in, you can see all 12 layers are still accessible. The only problem is that if we go back to our original composition, you can see that we lost our parenting. So all we have to do is re-link these together, and we're good to go. And if we play it back, the only problem I have is that each individual thing is not centered on the screen when it's first revealed. So the way we can fix that is by animating our null object called type controller, which we set up earlier. So we can do that by creating position keyframes. And you can reveal position by, again, hitting P on your keyboard or toggling down through these drop-down menus. But we'll make a new position keyframe, go backwards in time to, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames after illustration begins to appear. And we can drag that final keyframe to right there because that's where we want it to end. And then let's go 5 frames before illustration. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here we can change the position so it's centered on design and animation. And one of the easy ways we can do this is toggle down and click on this little button over here and click proportional grid. And that way we get a center line, or we can do title action safe, which I'm actually going to prefer in this situation. That's pretty well centered there. So we're going to go even further back, and we're going to go to 5 seconds after animation appears, or 5 frames rather. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we are going to create a new keyframe at our current playhead time by pressing this little diamond button. Then we're going to go back 5 frames before, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then let's center it on design. That's good. Centered. And then that should be it. So then we've got design to animation and then animation to illustration. So if we play that back, okay, that looks good. Again, we've got the linear motion, so it seems very stale and robotic. So we can just select all of these frames, right click, easy ease. And then if we click on our graph editor, you can see they're the default curves, but that might actually work nicely for us because we want this to be secondary animation, not as aggressive as all of our reveal animation. Okay, and just like that, we've got our first section all done. So now that all our type is done, it's time to create a decorative element that'll help us transition between the text that we've already done and the picture of ourselves and our name that we're going to be making later.